Hey everyone, this is Ryan from Aethix Fitness, and you're listening to the Aethix Approach podcast, the podcast where we highlight inspirational up-and-coming vegan and plant-based athletes that you've probably never heard of yet, and what they do to absolutely kill it on a plant-based diet. If you haven't already, it would really help out if you subscribed to, liked, commented, and or shared any of the content I'm producing, including this podcast, free articles and training programs on aethixfitness.com, videos on the Aethix Fitness YouTube channel, and more. I truly appreciate all of you guys for the love and support. In today's episode, I speak with Taylor Patterson, aka TheVeganTrainer, a personal trainer and life coach who specializes in working with others to help improve various aspects of their life above and beyond just physical fitness. Taylor has a unique approach to his coaching that aims to improve various lifestyle facets, such as work, social, and financial health, to name a few, with the approach that improving each aspect will contribute to overall well-being. Taylor and I discuss his philosophies on this, as well as what got him into fitness and strength training, what drew him to veganism over a decade ago, making healthy yet sustainable diet choices, his take on masculinity and how veganism can tie into it, and so much more. Taylor is very well versed in what he does, and I particularly love his story about what drew him to going vegan, as well as his work in men's health and his views on masculinity. I hope you enjoy the episode as much as I enjoyed our chat. All right, what's up, guys? This is the Aethix Approach podcast, and today I am with Taylor Patterson, aka TheVeganTrainer. And yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast this time. It was great.
Man, thanks for having me.
And yeah, I'm stoked to have you back on, man.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Yeah, man, I'm stoked to be on. So I've loved all your podcast episodes and all your interviews. So I'm really, really grateful to be on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I definitely feel the same about yours, of course. And the last chat we had was awesome. So I'm really stoked to get in on everything that we're going to talk about today. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, do you mind doing like a quick little intro about yourself, kind of like who you are, what you do, things like that?
Yeah, man, totally. Well, so name's Taylor. I'm kind of sort of colloquially known as the Vegan Trainer, I guess, at the Vegan Trainer on Instagram. So I got into personal training about just over 10 years ago and dipped into online coaching, started dipping my toes into it around 2013 and then went fully into it around 2018, 2019. And yeah, so now I help people, my primary role as a coach is to help people transform their habits and their behaviors. So a lot of people stereotype me as like a bodybuilding coach, and definitely help people a little bit with that. But that's my primary focus, and what I love to do is help people change their mindsets, change their behavior, and form good habits.
Mm-hmm. So is that mainly what you do now, kind of more of like almost life coaching stuff?
Yeah, well, it ends up being that way. So most people come to me for like a program and a meal plan, and I give people a program and I give people a meal plan, but knowing full well that we're probably not going to start there. So I coach on three aspects. Well, when you're on my podcast, you know how I have the goal wheel, right? And there's 8 quadrants, just like friends and family, lifestyle, or personal development, spirituality, all that sort of stuff, finances. So I narrow that down into 3 like larger, more all-encompassing categories: nutrition, lifestyle, and exercise. And those 3 areas I coach people on. And for most people, one of those areas, if they really dialed in their habits and changed their mindset, changed their practices with it, it would cascade into the rest of their life. So that's what I do, is we focus on one of those 3, dialing it in for a week, and then building on that week over week.
Okay. And you kind of grew into that from more of like fitness-based coaching, like exclusively?
Yeah, man, I got into personal training, and I loved personal training. The reason why I got into personal training is because I saw the effect a personal trainer had on my mom's life. Transformed her completely. Like she took back her life basically because she hired a personal trainer, and I was a mechanic before becoming a personal trainer. I was like, oh man, I really want to have that same effect, in people's lives. But the way I got into coaching, the way that I just described, was actually because I was a personal trainer, but I was really just hired to count reps and like carry people's weight around, and I actually went through like a bit of a crises in the early stages of my personal training career with binge eating. So I developed a really severe binge eating disorder. And as I got out of that, I sought some help for it, and I learned a lot. Actually, took some courses on behavior change and mindset change and whatnot, and I helped get out of that. And it's kind of like the hero's journey, right? Like you come full circle and you contribute contribution. So my contribution was changing the way that I approached my work with my clients to, instead of focusing on just the reps, the weights, the exercise that we're doing, that's the how, but the underlying foundation is built on mindsets, mindset change and behavior change and habit formation.
Okay. And when you first got into personal training, like towards the beginning, did you coach out of a gym, I guess?
Yeah. I still go to the gym.
Oh, really?
That I used to coach at. Yeah.
It's like in your area at home or something?
Yeah. It's like a 8-minute walk. It's an awesome gym, man. It's like my favorite gym ever. Been to a lot of gyms and it's still my favorite. It's called Studio 4 Athletics in Victoria. And the reason why I like it so much is like, well, one, the vibe's awesome. Everybody there is super friendly, and they're OG. A lot of them have been going there forever. The owners have like owned it basically since it started, and it's been a staple in that area. But it's also an old brick building, so when you go in there, it's like it makes you want to work, right? It kind of, it's like if Rocky lived in Victoria, which is where I live, he'd probably train there.
That's awesome. It's just like, is it like one of those like hardcore bodybuilding gyms, or is it just kind of, I don't know?
It's more of a martial arts studio, actually. So there's obviously strength training equipment and whatnot everywhere. There's barbells and we have tons of squat racks, tons of barbells. But we have it's on a full size, but it's a almost full size boxing ring in there, a bunch of bags. We have boxing classes all the time. We have martial arts classes, dance classes. And one of the owners is like a really well-known capoeira, I don't want to say instructor because he is an instructor, but like he's like very well known. I guess I should say probably practitioner, like evangelist for capoeira.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you do any boxing at all?
I did a little bit, man. Like way back when, I was never any good, but I used to. I was really lucky when I first started going there that I made friends with a bunch of people who were high level boxers and kickboxers. And so I trained a little bit with them, but nothing too crazy. But, they taught me a lot. Kickboxing, they taught me a lot. And there was another guy who did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was a smaller guy than I was, but man, like, he trained with me. Like we'd go lift weights and I'd school him on the weights, and then we go grapple. And he would kick my butt, man. Like he was just like, it was like the leverages are just completely different.
Yeah.
And there's actually a guy who trained there forever, and he's about as high level a kickboxer as you can get, named Gabriel Varga. He fights in K1, or is he fighting Glory? I can't remember. Maybe he's fought in both, but he's like, he's about as declarated as it gets when it comes to kickboxing. He's from my hometown, trained there for years and years.
Yeah. That's fucking awesome. I am so interested in like boxing and kickboxing. I wanted to get into it for a while.
Yeah.
But I did like some free trials in New York and stuff here, obviously. And not knowing what I was getting myself into, I like did a couple of those kickboxing classes, being like, oh, cool, maybe I can learn like some technique or something. But it was one of those things where it was like, oh, it's kickboxing cardio.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, this kind of sucks.
Yeah. Dude, my friend who's never boxed a day in her life went for a job application at one of those places, and they're like, have you ever boxed? And she's like, no. And they said, oh, do you do like, have you ever done any classes, like cardio classes? She's like, yeah, like I've taught some cardio classes. Like, oh, perfect. Yeah. And they were going to hire her on the spot. And she's never, thrown a kick in her life. Yeah. So
wow.
I think, so if you're going to learn it, one of the best ways I think is to hire a private coach who's a seasoned boxer. They can train you one-on-one, and usually they're looking for clients. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. But I found some guy who was going to do it, who was like a friend of a friend. And we had everything set up, and then he was like, yeah, come in my backyard. I have like a little like boxing, station or whatever. Like, he's got like a heavy bag and stuff.
Nice.
Set up, and like, I'll come teach you one-on-one, like, once a week or something. And then he texted me like a week later, and he's like, yo, man, actually, I got in a fight with my roommate and I got to move out. And I was like,
Oh
yeah, I just
no.
never heard from him again after that. So I was like, I guess it's not meant
Oh
for me.
no.
Now I have
Dang,
my own
man.
backyard in Brooklyn
Yeah.
again, and I'm like, damn, maybe I should just get a heavy bag and like find
Dude.
somebody to come to my place and teach me again.
Do it, man. Do it. And you know, the one of the approaches that I took when I was first, and again, let me just state for the record that I am not a boxer. I'm not a kickboxer. I would get my butt handed to me by anybody who's taking it seriously for
Yeah.
even a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But what I did find really helpful and really productive for me when I was learning to like hit pads and do a little bit of sparring and whatnot is I would learn from them and I would hit at the pace that they would teach me to pace.
Mhm.
But then I would almost on my own time when I was in the room with boxing equipment, I would take like the Tai Chi approach and just really focus on like super slow, focus on the movement, like trying to figure out how to, you know, turn my hips, pivot off my toe and all that kind of stuff. Very, very slowly, just repetitive. And that helped a lot, man. Just not to try to
Yeah.
waste the bag, but just
Yeah.
get the mechanics dialed in.
So you kind of worked up from just like perfecting the technique almost, and then sped it back up again, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Tai Chi, right? Like Tai Chi is just martial arts at a snail's pace.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
So another thing that I'm curious about. So what actually drew you to fitness in the first place? And did you play sports in school or anything and kind of just like branched off into it, or what? Yeah. What kind of led you to it?
Well, when I was in high school, I played rugby and I played baseball.
Okay.
And I played a little bit of lacrosse when I was younger. I really liked it, but when we moved to the island, stopped playing.
Mhm.
But I also lifted weights a little bit in high school. I shouldn't say a little bit, quite a bit actually. I lifted weights in high school for rugby, and I was pretty competitive with some of my friends. And I think back to those days. I would love to go see like videos of our form because we didn't know anything,
Yeah.
and we were trying. All we had was like Flex magazine. I don't know if you remember Flex magazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know, seeing these guys, you know, bench press like 4 plates and stuff. I'm like, oh well, we should be able to do that. So we're just like just grinding, man, like trying to lift stupid amount of weight.
How much weight were you lifting in high school?
You know what? When I was when I was in to grade 12, the heaviest I've ever been in my life was in grade 12, and I was like 220 or something like that.
Was it like
And
a dream result?
I was a big boy. Yeah. Huh? What's that?
You were just like dreamer bulking?
Well, man, like I was playing rugby at the time, and also just eating. Like I would go to school, and then I'd come home and I'd eat like just everything, you know, as a kid does. And then I'd go to rugby practice if I had rugby practice, or I'd go to baseball practice or a baseball game if I had that. And I'd come home and I'd just eat forever. And then I'd go home or go to the gym and with my friends, and we'd work out until like 10 o'clock at night. So I was like constantly training in some capacity. But when I was in grade 12, and again, like I would love to see my form because I'm sure it was just absolute crap. But I did bench. But the first time I ever benched 315 was in grade 12.
Yeah.
And then I never touched that weight again until last year. Yeah, for bench.
That was the last time you touched 315 since high school.
I'm pretty sure, like if I think back, if I can remember correctly. And the reason is because after high school, I completely stopped working out and I actually got down to like the lowest we had ever been was sub 140.
Oh,
so
wow.
I went from 220 in grade 12.
Wow.
And then when I was like in my early 20s, I got down to sub 140, but I was surfing every day.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
how tall are you?
6'7", somewhere around there.
5'7"?
No, I'm just joking. I'm like 5'11", somewhere around there. It depends on how much yoga I've been doing.
I was like, did you mean 6'5" foot? Like, what the fuck? 7 is massive.
No. I like to pretend I'm a lot taller than I am. No, I'm about 5'11".
Okay.
But what? So man, I started rambling there. Your question: when I moved to Vancouver from the island, so I was surfing like twice a day, every day when I lived in this place called Tofino, and then I moved to Vancouver. And I was, man, to be honest with you, I was just like, I was hyper and I was bored because I was used to like skateboarding or surfing every day. And I was doing nothing. I was like, you know, I was having fun in Vancouver, but I wasn't really putting my energy and so I got a membership to to the community center. I started going to the gym every day, not because I was like trying to achieve any goal, but just because I was like, well, it's a good way to burn off energy and, get a decent sleep, and just kind of went from there.
Yeah. I also grew up skateboarding. I actually still skateboard a little bit. That's funny.
Dude, that's awesome. I want to. Every time I see someone skate, I'm like, I want so bad to, did you skate park or did you skate bowl?
I kind of always so I skated like a little bit of both, I guess. Kind of like always when I was growing up, like, I don't know, I started skateboarding when I was like 14. I always skated like street, just a bunch of like curbs and like ledges and stairs and stuff up until I was like 18, and I got a car and I could start going to skate parks and stuff. And then I started skating like more rails and kind of like more mini ramps and more bowls and stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
And now I kind of just like, I don't know, maybe I skate like once every, I don't know, 3 weeks or so. Like not much anymore, getting older and there's like a lot of other stuff to do. But yeah, man, it's still a little.
You don't bounce anymore, dude. That's the thing.
You know what? I broke an ankle skating, but that was the worst injury I really got. I was skating handrails and stuff too for a while. So I never got like beat up as bad as I could have. But yeah, man, it hits hard. Skateboarding is really hard.
It's nothing like it, man. It's crazy. And I think about getting on my skateboard all the time. Actually, I got my skateboard at my parents' place, sitting in their barn.
Oh yeah.
I actually got two, but they're both broken, thank God. One of the trucks is one of the axles is stripped, so I have to get a new set of trucks. And then the other one, I think the board's broken in half or something like that. Mm-hmm. But man, I'm actually glad, because I always think like, oh, I should take that out, put it out in the pool or something like that. And then, that would just be a recipe for, 6 months completely out of commission.
That's another reason why I'm always so cautious about skating anymore. I'm just like, I cannot afford to like break an ankle or something anymore.
Yeah.
One thing about skateboarding that I feel like ties in a lot to weightlifting is just like the individual progression of it. You know how it's like so individualized, like it's just it's not like a team sport, which is what I'm getting at, I guess. And like lifting is also just something where you can like throw on your headphones and just like get in the zone and just like do your own thing and progress on your own time and everything. And I think that's kind of what drew me personally to like lifting after skating like my whole life. So I don't know if that's like the same thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I really like? I like both of those things, or both that, and I also like, which is similar to surfing and skateboarding, is like not so much competition. I guess it is a little bit of competition, but it's more just like doing it with your friends. So for instance, I got some friends at the gym that I sometimes train with, and one guy in particular, if he's watching this, Dylan, I'm gonna bench more than you next week. But we have like a friendly competition usually, right? So and I feel like it's similar to like that with skateboarding. Like if you're if your friend landed a trick, it's like, shit, now I gotta shoot, now I gotta can I swear on this? I can't.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time.
Okay, perfect. Now I gotta try, and like so there's a little bit of that too, which I really liked, or surfing too. Like you're just trying to outdo your friends a little bit, or like show them up a bit,
I completely agree with that too. It's just that little friendly competition that you throw in. The thing with lifting is that it's so like genetic based, where it's just like, damn, like you're friends with somebody else who's just like just a straight up beast on like the bench press or something. Totally. Like, damn, I can't compete with this, But that's the one aspect that makes it a little tricky.
Genetic phenoms, and like especially some people like you would never suspect, and they're just they're like 140 pounds or something, and they're deadlifting like 550 or something. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's strength to weight ratio that I'll never be able to achieve.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so genetic based with lifting. Yeah. But I mean, you have a good bench. You weigh like what? You said like 190-ish now?
No, I don't know. I actually haven't weighed myself since 2019.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stopped weighing myself mostly at this point, just because I haven't weighed myself for so long. It's like, wow, isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
But, but last time I checked out, I usually hover around like 200, mostly around 200, maybe a little bit more sometimes. And my bench has been okay. Traditionally, bench has been the hardest for me. And only, like I say, last year I hit 315 for the first time in basically forever.
Yeah.
And then and then it's been getting a little bit better. The most I benched this year, like I tried for 335 again today, and I actually missed it today, but that's more due to a shoulder thing. So,
Okay. You
but
have
the rest that's
long pauses on your bench too, right? I think I remember you posted some videos.
Yeah.
You pause for like a couple seconds.
Yeah, usually 2 to 3 seconds I try to pause. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's out of curiosity, do you feel like that's safer on your shoulders, or do you kind of go by powerlifting standards, or?
I initially started doing it because I wanted to get stronger out of the hole, and also for powerlifting, right? I've always wanted to do like a powerlifting show eventually, not because I have any, aspirations of winning, but because just, for me. But the other reason I do it is because, so with like the stretch reflex is a huge thing in lifting. Especially for things like the squat and bench.
Yeah.
And I find that like I can touch and go, but I find when I do touch and go, I dislocated the shoulder when I was younger, and it's always been a tricky shoulder, and it's always the thing that will prevent me from benching, what I think I should bench that day.
Yeah.
And I find that when I touch and go, I have a real, it just feels it feels like it's being put into a very difficult position, and there's just a lot of quick weight transfer. And I feel like when I pause, that weight transfer obviously is slowed down, and I can organize myself a lot easier, and it takes a lot more strength, and it's a lot harder physically, but it feels like it's much better on my shoulders and everything involved.
Yeah, I completely agree. I pretty much always also bench with like at least a very slight pause, just because touch and go, it feels like you can almost start getting into a groove where you just start bouncing it a little bit. And maybe if it's not even much, it's just like you don't have full control, it feels like. And obviously you can kind of add like a little more weight than maybe you could bench with a pause, because you're cheating a little bit. I feel like it just makes you a little more prone to injury, at least for me.
Totally.
So
actually, that's another good point too, is technically you can bench more with a touch and go, but the question is, do you want to? Like, would it be better to maybe bench a little bit less, a little bit more safely, and on a regular basis? And then because, bench press, I've always said bench press is the dumbest exercise in the world. Like the fact that we but of course, I'm always going to continue to try to get stronger at it, but it's such a dumb thing to try to get stronger at bench press, because like you think about that movement, you think the human body's meant to bench 300 pounds plus? No, not at all. The shoulder is a very delicate joint, and there's an argument to be made that it's, still evolving. And, we're not designed to be benching that much weight. Anything over 200 pounds is just kind of ludicrous.
That makes me think about just how like for general health, you don't have to be lifting that much weight. I was listening to somebody talk about this. I think, do you follow any of those guys from Barbell Medicine by any chance?
You know what? Yes, sort of. I've subscribed to them, but you know what? I haven't seen. Oh, no, it's a podcast, right?
They do a podcast, and they have like a YouTube channel and stuff.
I was listening to them for a while, but they just fell off my radar. But sorry, what you heard something
I was just saying, it reminded me of how they were talking about how like for general fitness and like just being healthy, you don't have to like lift very much weight at all. It's just like you can just go in and like honestly squat, like if you can rep 225 for a few reps or something on a squat even, and bench like, I don't know, 135, 185, like nothing really, just for general health. He was saying that that's like totally fine. You don't have to be lifting a ton of weight. It's just like something that like me and you love to do because it's fun, and it's like gives you something to progress on,
There is that feeling you get when you do a heavy deadlift, when you do a heavy squat, or when you're grinding the squat too. When you're in a squat, you're like halfway up, and it's like it's just inching up, but you can get it. But it's just moving by millimeters. That is it is an enjoyable experience, because you feel how like you feel like you're the master of your body. You realize, it's like a part of it. Like you're not putting all these pieces together in that moment, but there's a summation of an idea that's coming to, at least to me, where it's like, all of those days, all of those weeks, all of those months, all of those years that I've been training and getting stronger, I'm pushing myself today in a way that's, I'm using all of that strength that I built up and I'm building even more for next week. And I kind of love that feeling.
Yeah, it's like it really builds patience too, because I mean,
Yeah.
strength, especially if you're not, not relying on like exogenous substances at all, it
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
so long to build up
It
strength at a
does.
certain point. And you finally,
Grams.
yeah, and then you finally, after like
Yeah.
months and months of like your training cycle or whatever, you finally reach like a peak, and you're like, all right, I'm going for that number, and you're all nervous. It's like that feeling of like you got the jitters, because obviously it's a heavy
Yeah.
fucking weight, never experienced before, and then like
Yeah.
you crush it or whatever, and you're like, dude, this is the best feeling.
Let me ask you. So, when you get into that peak weight, let's say you're training for a peaking exercise.
Yeah.
Do you have? Because everyone knows that feeling, especially squats, right?
Yeah.
Like squats, deadlifts are different because, like, you're pulling it from a dead stop. But when you get under a squat, you have to walk it out, and you lift the bar up from the rack, and you go, "Fuck, this is heavy," So when that happens for you, when you're training for a peak set in a training program, do you have like a mantra, or do you have anything that you like hypes you up to give you the best possibility that's gonna come back up?
That's a really good. Yeah, I would say definitely. I feel like towards like an end of like a training cycle where like I'm really pushing like intensity and stuff, I'll like start getting in a mindset where like first of all, I'll start taking more caffeine. I'll start ramping up the caffeine, and I'll start playing music like heavier and heavier and louder. And then like for those really heavy sets, like a lot of times when I'm really trying to push it, and it's not just, it's like a peak set, like you said, I almost like kind of just get there and stand in front of the bar and kind of just like put my hands on my nose, like my eyes, shut my eyes and try to visualize it a little bit. Like really just like take deep breaths. Sometimes I'll even like, hyperventilate a little bit, like on purpose. I read that there's actually like some evidence that doing that actually might help a tiny bit, but I don't know if it's true at all. But yeah,
I bet it does.
Yeah, well, I guess there's like merit to like breathing exercises, but either way, I do that sometimes. But more often than not, I just kind of like get in front of the bar, kind of start pacing a little bit, and just really like breathe and like put my, shut my eyes and just try to visualize it, and just like let everything just go. Like sometimes I'll like channel like, I don't know. I'm not like an angry person, so I'll try to channel like some, inner dark energy.
Yeah.
But
dude, you got to.
Yeah, I don't know. What about you?
It's all in us.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I do a lot of that too. I do the if it's a squat, I like to like bang the bar a bit, amp myself up a bit.
Yeah.
But the other thing I do, this is something that I started doing, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I love it. And it's just an internal dialogue that I repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, have you ever heard of the little engine that could?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think I can. Well, I noticed that when I would get under the bar, especially bench press, I would lift it up and I go, oh fuck, I'm never gonna get this back up.
Yeah, I know.
As soon as I lift it up, like I get that, in the internal dialogue. So it's like, I'm just going to, change that forcefully.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I'm doing like a 1RM squat or a deadlift or anything 1RM, I just repeat, of course I can, of course I can, of course I can, of course I can. And like, as I keep doing that, and then I go, squatting, if I'm going to do just before I dip down into the squat, I like this internal dialogue has like built up this, I actually believe it, I'm like, of course I can, this is gonna be easy. And then, man, it was a game changer as soon as I started doing that.
Now that you mention it, sometimes like, especially for squats, I would say, where it's just like that crushing weight on your back, or like I've been doing squats for a while. It's just like that feeling where you're like, dude, this is so fucking heavy. Like, how am I going to do this? And I've been trying to do the same thing where like, I kind of forgot about this, but I definitely do the same thing where I just tell myself before, like, I definitely got this. I've been like crushing the weights lately. Like, this is only a little bit more. I know I got this. And then sometimes, like, even still, I have to start kind of doing what you're doing. But yeah, even still, like, I rack it, and I'm like, yo, this is insane. Like, And then, like, at the bottom, sometimes you're just like, how am I going to get back up? Like
Yeah.
time
Oh
slows
man.
down from being like, you know, a 2-second squat or whatever to being like
Yeah.
a whole minute, and so many thoughts go
Oh
through
man.
your head.
Especially when you're at the bottom, it's like, oh man, is this gonna even
Yeah.
budge at the bottom, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever think about, I know you're kind of thinking about like maybe doing a powerlifting meet, it sounds like, but have you ever done any like any other sort of physique related stuff or strength or anything?
No, I've never done any physique stuff.
No.
I'm trying to think. I've had like friendly competitions with friends
Yeah.
and stuff. I really want to do a powerlifting competition. I still have to fix some stuff. Like I really have to. My main weakness is my lower back and my core.
Yeah.
I've been really like I've actually been really diligent about my stretching and my mobility the last month or so.
Mhm.
So that's getting a little bit better. But if I can dial that in, then I would like to probably this time next year
Yeah.
try to do a powerlifting show. But bodybuilding doesn't entice me. The reason is because well, I like eating, you know, and I um I used to count calories and macros, and I was
Mhm.
hyper diligent about really worried about staying lean,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, when I was younger, and and uh, and it was really like I didn't realize it until I stopped how negative of an impact that was having on my life.
Mhm.
And it was only when I stopped counting calories and macros and not giving a shit about how
Yeah.
lean I was, and started eating almost twice as much food as I used to
Mhm.
eat, that not only did I'm probably leaner regularly now than I was
Mhm.
before, but I was just enjoyed life so much more. And
Yeah.
I just feel like no knock on bodybuilding. It's just that's what I wish there was I wish there was a version of bodybuilding shows that was more catering towards like people who are like 10% to
Mhm.
12% body
Yeah.
fat and like looked healthy, but also
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like
Definitely.
that I would do for sure because it'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. So I have a lot of thoughts about that because I completely agree with like, I just don't even think the look of, especially for people who, I would probably even say in general, but people, especially people who like aren't like super enhanced, that look of getting
Mm,
super shredded when you're like, you know, like you're a natural guy, like you're repeating natural
doesn't
or
look
whatever.
good.
No, it
Mm.
looks weird. It looks like you just look like emaciated a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if it was like 8 to 10% maybe, and not like,
exactly,
you know,
yeah.
like 5 to 8%. I don't know. Even
Yeah.
8% is like, people don't realize it, but that's damn lean.
Really lean, really
Yeah.
lean. And the other thing too is, especially as a natural, like you get down to 5%, and you can look up stories of guys who do that, and
Yeah.
they get blood work done after, and their
Oh yeah.
testosterone is dipped down to like deplorable levels and doesn't come back up for 6, 7, 8 months later.
One thing about hormones is that they take a long time to regulate. And
Yeah,
when you go and crash diet it may not even be technically crash dieting, but when you bring your calories that low for an
yeah,
extended period of time, like you said, testosterone will be like, you know, you like as if you were 80 years old or something. And that
yeah,
sucks.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Don't want
you're
that.
not gonna be having a good time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why you wouldn't do it, because straight up, I think you're a jacked motherfucker. And
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah, yeah. Like I think, I mean, the photos you post at least looks like you stay pretty lean for the most part. And
Yeah,
like
mostly.
you're a big guy, like 5'11", 200 pounds.
Yeah,
That's big, dude. I feel like you would do
yeah.
really well if you ever decide to do it.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah, I mean, like, I appreciate that. There's definitely some things that I would like. I don't think I would place very well for a number of reasons. Like everybody's different. Like their build's different. Like for instance,
Uh,
Nimai, right? Like Nimai
yeah,
looks like he's fucking smuggling baseballs in his arm.
yeah.
Like
His arms are
it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It literally looks like his bicep is gonna pop out of his
Yeah, he's
arm.
got a really, really small waist too, which would like, you know,
Yeah,
set him up really nicely for like the IFBB stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that V taper look, I guess.
Mm. So for me, like if I were to compete, there's some real challenges that I would face just
Yeah.
from aesthetics. For instance, like I have, and this is some of the postural things I'm working on for powerlifting, but they obviously translate to the aesthetics of bodybuilding is, I have pretty bad anterior pelvic tilt from well, predisposed to it, but also because I injured my back deadlifting like 6 years ago. And my recovery process was just crap. So I lost a lot of core strength, went to anterior pelvic tilt, and I also raised my right hip. So my core looks, aesthetic wise, looks crap, like for a bodybuilding show. So if I were to take it seriously to go to a bodybuilding show, I'd really have to fix my APT first and lower my right hip, because it doesn't look symmetrical. It's not really a bodybuilding type of work.
I was gonna say, I mean, kind of like what you're making me think about right now is how bodybuilding can kind of lead to being hypercritical of yourself in ways that nobody else will ever realize.
Totally.
So I feel like, you know, for some people, I mean, for me, I'm just not interested in that at all, because, you know, I'm more interested in the performance aspect, but also I don't think I do good with like people critiquing the way I look mentally. Like, I feel like, I don't know, it's
weird.
it is kind of weird, but also I feel like it would be like mentally not the best for me, because it would get in my head too much, and then I'd be hypercritical of myself, and I think it would just bring my my well-being down. That's kind of like, even if I had the potential to ever be any good with it, I don't think I'd want to do it. I'm more interested. I would like to do more powerlifting meets, but I got a small frame, so also everything is kind of hard for me. I just fucking love lifting, you know.
How tall are you?
I'm 6 feet tall, but I have a really small frame. So like, I generally stay pretty lean. It's just kind of easy for me to stay lean.
Yeah, so you're lean year round pretty well, eh?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I actually did like dreamer bulks for years, and I kind of stayed around like 205, which for me was like 17% body fat-ish, like on like DEXA scans and stuff. But I stay at like 175 and 180 now, which is like about 11% or so on DEXA. But I can eat 2,800, 3,000 calories a day, and I do great. Like, I just stay this body fat. So it works well for me, but I don't want to get like crazy lean. And it's also not the best, like strength wise, but I kind of just keep trying to push my strength at this body fat. It's kind of like what I'm enjoying lately.
Me too, man. I'm the same way. It's like, you kind of have to, I think it sounds like you and I are very similar in the approach, where it's like, you know, you want the aesthetics, you also want the strength, but more than anything, you're like doing it for yourself, right? Like you enjoy lifting, you enjoy the results, even though they're minuscule week over week, month over month. But that's what it is for me at this point too, is I enjoy the self competition of lifting. And even outside of the lifting itself, you know, I changed my workout routine, or not my workout schedule up recently to work out in the mornings. And even that was a huge challenge too. But that was an awesome experience too. It's like, it gets to get you out of your comfort zone and like challenge you in a new way. It's like, you know, but it's part of the process of making you better incrementally.
Yeah. You know, actually that makes me think about how, like, because, you know, we have it pretty hard, like lifting for as long as we do, trying to get stronger. The way that I've been trying to kind of like figure things out is just being super, super meticulous about like my programming. And because like I said, I don't think I'm like genetically blessed with strength or size or anything. I just try to like counter it by just like, you know, measuring everything perfectly. And I really enjoy like that process. So like, I figured out exactly how many sets I feel like I need lately to keep pushing my strength up.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I've been like really hypercritical of all that. And I need like a ton of volume, but I've been discovering like this formula that I've been following for like a couple of years now, where like as soon as I start creeping up into this certain set zone for like at like a certain RPE at like certain weights, I can like keep pushing my strength up, you know, even though I keep getting more fatigued, and then like I reset. But that's kind of how I've been pushing my deadlift up towards like almost 500 now. And that for me is like my goal. It's like what I want to do. And it's super hard, but that's kind of my process for trying to get better now.
That's awesome, man. I think we have a similar approach too. Volume is a huge predictor for me too. That's basically the only way I'll see progress now, volume. And but you know, including a lot of strength sets at the you know, the very start of the workout. When you gotta be mindful of time, because I think it's almost 7 for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I have to about 7:15. I don't want to rush this conversation.
Okay.
I feel like, yeah, this is great, but yeah, we can go to like,
Okay. You let me know. I'll talk forever. So you just kick me off.
No, so will I. I keep getting distracted about talking about working out because it's so fun to talk about. I just
Yeah. All I wanted to say was with the volume is I'm exactly the same. And I think once you get to a certain level of trained, like once your body has been trained to a certain level, really the only thing that is going to move it is volume.
Yeah.
I don't think that increasing intensity, obviously intensity has a huge role too. But I don't think it has as much as a role to play for most people when they get to a trained level as much as volume is, which is a really fine balancing act because it can lead to fatigue very quickly, and if you're not careful about putting rest blocks in or dialing it back every now and then it can be counterproductive.
Yeah, you nailed it, dude. That's exactly how I feel. And at a certain level you definitely have to monitor your intensity and your fatigue levels and everything. So
yeah,
that's a really good point. Just to kind of I also really want to talk to you about like vegan stuff really quick.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I really want to talk to you also about the work you do in men's health, because I think that's
totally.
Yeah. So to kind of transition a little bit, I'm curious about how you got into veganism and what kind of led you to that. How long you've been vegan for, how it kind of affected your training, things like that.
Well, it's been the hardest 6 hours of my life, man.
Are you you're lacking B12 already?
I was carnivore 6 hours before this. I was so when I was 140 pounds or sub 140, that was when I was living in this little town called Tofino on Vancouver Island, which is where I'm at right now. And I was working at a butcher shop, and make a long story short, basically this is how I remember it. So it was a really interesting week. It all collapses into about a week of time. So the first friend I ever had who died was around that time. And if you've ever had a friend who's died, like the first friend that dies, it's a shock to your system, because you're used to old people dying, but young people dying, it kind of shakes your concept of mortality. So that happened, and I was having I wouldn't say a hard time dealing with it. I was having a very weird time dealing with it. It just was a weird moment for me. And then the next thing that happened was a friend of mine was she was pushing her grocery cart down the aisle, and that she was coming towards our department, and I saw her coming towards our department, and she picked up a box of Cheerios and threw it in her grocery cart. And then she came out to our department and grabbed a steak and threw it in, basically the exact same way that she threw in the box of Cheerios. And I saw that, and I was like, man, something's wrong here. And actually I missed one thing, because right before that when I saw her throw that box of Cheerios, and that's when I decided to make a switch. But right before that, I had asked my manager who ran the butcher shop, I said, I've my whole life, which was not very long at that point, but when all the jobs that I'd had all been manual labor in some capacity. I said, this job, I've been the most tired at the end of the week compared to any of my other jobs. And he kind of jokingly said, it's because you deal with death all day. I was like, oh man, that's crazy. And my friend had just died too. So, and then this whole incident with the Cheerio box. So I decided to cut animal products out until I got my hunting license. I'd grown up fishing, but I'd never been hunting. And I wanted to see if I could, kill and prepare a deer, or kill and prepare, a goat or something like that. And I just never got my hunting license. So I cut everything out. And basically I didn't know what calories were. I didn't know what fat was, protein. I sort of knew what that was, but I was basically just eating like spinach salads, 3 times. So I went from, and I was surfing twice a day, skateboarding, at least once a day. And I just wasted away. And my doctor, I was like 138 pounds or something like that. My doctor said, basically you have to start eating meat again, because I was wasting away. And then that was in like 2005. And then fast forward to 2008, I moved to Vancouver. And then in 2010, I met some people at a cafe that worked up the street from where I was working at, it was a vegetarian restaurant that had some vegan options. And some of the girls that worked there were vegan. And they and a friend of mine actually at the time turned me on to what veganism actually is. And I started learning more about it, learning more about nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I went vegan. So long-winded story, but so that's kind of how it all came about. And then ever since then, just kind of checks all the boxes, right? It's it was for moral reasons to begin with, but makes perfect sense for pretty much every other reason to go vegan.
That is such a cool story. That is one of the coolest stories I've heard for someone going vegan, actually. It just because you work so hands-on, like at a butcher shop, and just how you distinctly remember, like the aspect of just putting, a plant-based food basically into a cart and not thinking anything about it, obviously, and then just throwing a piece of meat in there and also not thinking anything. That's just really cool for me to hear, because I never really, obviously, like I think about this pretty often, being vegan for a while now, but I never thought about, like, I guess the practical aspect of someone just at a store just throwing two different things in and not thinking twice. Obviously, I thought about other ways, but that's really interesting.
It was really weird, man. Because I can't remember how it felt before, but I can definitely remember like certain, like I remember we had the big meat cooler, obviously, and I'd go in there after that, and like we had the half of a carcass hanging from the roof or whatever. And I remember looking at these things, like, you could see their ribs and all that. And I was like, man, this is like, I never thought of these things as animals until that pretty much that moment, or things that had lives, essentially.
Yeah, that was like a rude awakening almost.
Yeah, it was weird, man.
Yeah, that was that's a really cool story, dude. That's funny how things so long ago, they stick out so distinctly if it really has an effect on you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So how did you find, so you went vegan a while ago, before it was cool.
Yeah.
How do you
I didn't even know what veganism was back then.
Yeah, that's really cool too. How do you feel like it affected, because you were already lifting and stuff, or shortly after, I guess, right? Because you kind of got back into lifting after you went down to that low weight of 140.
2008-ish, around 2009 is when I got back into lifting.
While you were a vegan?
And then like a year before, and then in 2010 is when I went vegan. But for anybody asking, like when I went vegan, I was about 165 pounds, maybe slightly less, probably 160, 165 pounds. And now I'm like 200, 205. So it's all
so you didn't find it right. So at the beginning, you didn't find it difficult at all to put on any muscle or size or anything once you knew what you were doing, right?
Well, interestingly enough, so I was trying to, back then, all I had to go on was like bodybuilding forums. So I was basically shoveling back vegan protein, and I did that for years, man. Like, and I was about 100, and I got up to about 175, 180 pounds, somewhere around there. And I remember my roommate actually at the time, he came in, I was making breakfast, and I had I was pouring powders on my oatmeal and stuff like that. And he's like, man, you're the king of powders. And I remember him saying that, and I was like, I don't want to be the king of powders. No one wants to be the king of powders. It's a terrible moniker. So I realized that this is probably not a very good thing to do, to be constantly eating, half of my calories from protein powder. So I started cutting it down slowly to the point where I just got to basically no protein powder. And I still put on, like, when I remember, like, basically when I cut protein powder out, I was about 185, 190 pounds. So, again, another 10 to 12 to 13 pounds of weight without protein powder. So
do you use any protein powder now at all again?
No, I'll buy it from time to time. Like, if you look through my Instagram, you'll see a couple of posts. Like, there's one with me over on my counter here with 2 tubs of Vega protein and like a whole bunch of vegetables. And the reason is because I'd been living off oatmeal for like a month and a half, dude. And
you mix the protein in there?
Yeah, I mix the protein. I mix, and the reason is because, like, I just I love the taste of like a protein oatmeal, but generally speaking, I'd say like 355 days out of the year I won't have protein.
Oh wow, okay. I actually just ate protein oatmeal today, and it was delicious.
Nice. Oh, dude, it's so good. It's so good.
Yo, sorry, what was that?
Well, now what I do is, instead of using protein powder, I just use straight up cacao. So a typical breakfast for me is like buckwheat or quinoa porridge. I'll add 2 bananas, add some cacao powder, and then mix in some oatmeal or oat milk, pardon me. And that's an awesome alternative.
Do you usually eat whole foods?
Yeah, pretty well exclusively.
Okay. What do you think your protein intake is daily, out of curiosity? If you had to guess.
Yeah, so I do track it from time to time just to see where it's at. It's anywhere. It depends on what I'm doing, but mainly, like usually, it's around like anywhere from about 100 to 140 grams.
Okay.
And yeah, so not too low.
Yeah.
And then, but then sometimes too, like I go through stints where, and not for any health reasons, not for any reason other than I love fruit, dude. Like it's the greatest. So if there's like fruit in season, like when I used to live in Vancouver, there was a farmer's market every Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'd go and I'd buy like, like a big thing of blueberries or a big thing of raspberries or a bunch of peaches or whatever. Yeah. And I was I'd go like weeks of just eating fruit. So, just because I like it, I'm not too worried about that.
Dude, I went to a 4th of July party yesterday.
Nice.
And and there was watermelon out, and I was craving watermelon, man. I ate like, dude, I'm not even kidding. I ate like probably more than half of what was out.
Oh, amazing, dude. Watermelon's the greatest.
Oh my God. It's one of the best fruits. Bananas, watermelon, and like blueberries are probably my 3 favorites.
Blueberries, yeah, dude. And raspberries too. If you ever get your hands on some fresh raspberries, are my favorite berries. Watermelon you can grill up like steak. Yeah,
I've seen that, and I never tried it before. Is it actually good?
I've never tried it either, but my sister-in-law, she makes it all the time, and they swear by it. So
yeah, watermelon is it's the best summer fruit. Now I want more watermelon.
Yeah, I might go buy some today.
Yeah. Okay, so I really want to touch on like the men's health stuff that you do, and I have no idea. All I know is that you said that you work in with men's health related stuff, and does that have to do with like life coaching kind of work?
Yeah, so it's I guess like the term is men's work, and what it is it's the principle is based in, if you look back in history, before the century, if you look back in history, there was always rite of passage, right? And that rite of passage for men, right? Mm-hmm. And women had it too, but it was just different. And there's a whole reason for it. You go into it, but kind of only have so much time. So the long story short of it is this is the best way to look at it I've ever seen. It's out of a book called From Boys to Men, fantastic book on men's rites of passage. It's from a counselor who worked with troubled youth. Mm-hmm. And the example he gives is, if you look back in history, rites of passage were to bring boys out of boyhood and turn them into men, to give them the responsibilities of the masculine, because it's a very heavy responsibility that comes with a lot of weight. It's not to be taken lightly. Right. And there's 2 different ways that it's approached. The right way, which is you think of a labyrinth, right? A labyrinth, it looks like a maze, but really it's one way in and one way out. You can't get lost. There's trials and tribulations to the center, but there's only one way in and there's one way out. And in history, boys would be led through this labyrinth, this metaphorical labyrinth, by the elders, by their father, but all the other men in the group. And they'd be led to the center where they would find themselves, where they'd go through the trials and tribulations. They would face possible death. They would face, possible death is the big one. Mm-hmm. And they'd be taught the ways of men, and then they would be led. They would find their way back out, and be brought into the tribe as a man. And more importantly, the most important part of that is the contribution to the society that they're a part of with this generative masculine energy. And it's very similar for women. I'm just, this is the man's version of it,
right? Or
the masculine version of it, I should say.
Okay.
The other way to do it, which is more, the kind of the wrong way to do it, which is what we do today, is you think about a maze. There's one way in, but there's a million obstacles. There's dead ends. There's things that depending on what maze you're in, could eat you or kill you. Yeah. And that's kind of what we do with our kids these days. Our boys, we just throw them into this maze and hope that they make it out. And we actually reprimand them for that. We reprimand them if they don't make it out properly. For instance, like we're adolescence or the teenagers is like a relatively new concept. Before, you were a boy and then you were a man. And now there's this like drawn out length of time where you really don't have any places in society. You have nothing to contribute. People are telling you what to do. You're also trying to push boundaries to figure out what your identity is, and we reprimand you for it. Mm-hmm. So men's work, and a big part of that too, I won't go into it, but a big part of that is also the fact that father figures are very hard to come by for a lot of kids. So anyways, all that goes into this, which is men's work. And men's work is groups of men who get together to support one another, to facilitate a positive generative transmutation of negative masculine energy into positive masculine energy, to support each other. And that's done through ceremony. Sometimes it's done through doing rites of passage. It's done through contribution to your community, but it's also just talking about the things that are challenging you, being supported by other men who are also going through their own challenges, and realizing that you have a support network. So I've been involved in that in some way, shape, or form for the last going on 4 years now, and it's been massively transformative for my life.
Yeah.
And so the way that I work that into my work now with some of my clients is if it's showing up for them. And the way to ask yourself if you're, and again, this sounds so one-sided because I keep saying guys, keep saying men, keep saying masculine. But that's just because that's what this is, right? That's not to say that there aren't supportive. There's a fantastic Instagram account called Rising Women, and it's the exact same thing for feminine energy for women. So this is men's work. And so with men, if you feel like there's a part of you, and most guys will identify with this, I'm trying to find my purpose, or I'm trying to find my place in life. I'm trying to find how do I show up in life? Why do I feel like I'm depressed? Like everything I do is for nothing.
Yeah.
That I'm just punching in and punching out every day. If that's you, then that's an intrinsic part of being a lost man in today's society. This is a way to reclaim it, to find a network of men who will help support that change, that transformation in you. Yeah.
Okay. So I really resonate with this because I just read a book that was probably one of my favorites in the past couple of years, which I'm sure you probably heard of. It's called Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging.
What's it called? I broke up there.
Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't heard that. No,
So
I'll have to check it out.
It literally talks about pretty much word for word what you said about how so many people are, struggling in today's society, especially men in this case that we're talking about right now, because they don't have like that kind of, rite of passage into like manhood. And, they would talk before, the book is really short actually. And it talks a lot about how people just they don't feel like they have a good purpose, or they don't know why they don't feel the right way, but they don't have that community or anything that's really making them feel like fulfilled. So the book talks a lot about war and how these people that were, involved in certain wars or whatever, these men, they would come back and they'd obviously be struggling with things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, and a lot of things like that, that obviously, goes as being diagnosed as like a disease basically. And that's not really the case necessarily. It's just, they went through an extremely powerful event for multiple reasons in their life. And then all of a sudden, they had a community. They were literally on, basically knocking on death's door with these other guys. So they go through this really, important bonding experience with these people, this community, and they come back, they get thrown back into society, and they don't feel like they have a purpose, and they experience a lot of other side effects and such. And it basically talks about how we're just missing that in society today. Basically exactly what you said. So I highly recommend that book, man. It's so good.
I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Yeah,
that's that's one of the biggest tragedies, I think. One of the biggest tragedies, I think, of the last 60 years is that we have all of these men and women going to these wars, and they're fighting for their country. And whether or not you agree with the wars is beside the point. They're going to fight for their country. It's not their decision. And when they come back, this has been a part of civilization as long as there's been civilization, which is, of wars. But part of war is accepting our warriors back into society and allowing them to share their gifts, because they have a lot of gifts to share. But we look at them as ugly. Not them, the people, but the gifts that they have to share is ugly. That's a big part of this whole process.
Yeah.
And because we've just cut that reciprocity off, we cut that contribution off from the people who come, men and women who come back from overseas. It just breaks this, what could be, a silver lining to a really dark ordeal. It makes it even darker.
Yeah. That's great, man. Man, if you read this book, I think you're really gonna love it. I'm excited for you to talk about
Yeah,
this
man, I'll
because,
definitely check it out.
yeah, I was so stoked on that book. So that's really cool stuff you're doing. Just out of curiosity, I'm not sure if this is in the realm of kind of like what you deal with at all, but just thinking in terms of like, fitness and veganism, especially veganism kind of being something that's like not, stereotypically considered like a masculine thing by most people.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are like, oh, like, mostly girls eat vegan, or men are very unlikely to go vegan because they feel like eating meat is like what they need to do. I don't know. Is that something that is you kind of like, I don't know, is that involved at all in the stuff you do, or if it's not, like, what kind of is your opinion on that?
I love I think veganism dovetails perfectly into men's work. If you think of the way I think about, so masculine energy is a positive thing. It can be very destructive, but if it's a genuine masculinity, that destruction is warranted. What we're seeing usually, if we think about masculine energy, when most people think about masculine in the world today, they're thinking about corporations, dumping, garbage into the ocean, wars, all that kind of stuff. And I'd argue that that's men who never actually grew up. You're looking at a whole multiple generations of people at the helm of industry who never went through these rites of passage, and therefore they're boys in men's bodies making boyish decisions. The reason why I think veganism dovetails so well into men's work and being a man and the idea of masculinity is because, human beings, we've inherited the earth. We're the stewards of this planet. We have the power to destroy or proliferate it. And that's a very, very weighty, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Being deciding to go plant-based when it's a lot easier to go to eat omnivorously. I think of it like so many people just put whatever shit they want into their mouth without regard for what goes into it and the environmental impact, or regard for how it affects their body. And I feel like, if you are a man who's taken ownership of not only his actions as it relates to his body and his health, but also as your actions relate to the world around you, as a man should, then the most masculine thing that you could do is choose a diet that causes the least amount of harm, unnecessary harm, and also provides the most likely scenario that will have a future for our children.
Yeah.
So I think it's the most masculine thing you can do.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that, actually. I mean, it's a very selfless decision to start eating plant-based. And I think that's something that more people need to realize. I mean, eating more broccoli and, seitan, tofu, whatever. I mean, that's going to be a way better option for the environment and for the world, the world we live in, and for the animals who can't defend themselves. And I think that ties in a lot, in my opinion, that ties in a lot to, what I think, kind of like my opinion for what a man should be looking for, like to defend people who can't defend themselves, and, in this case, it's Adam.
Totally. Well, that's traditionally what our role was in society, was to be the protectors and defenders, right? And that's the reason why I brought up, you look at corporations and like how masculine energy is represented in the world today.
Yeah.
And it's understandable why people would look at it with such
disdain,
angst.
Yeah.
Disdain is because it's thought of as this destructive, cancer on the earth that's, blatant disregard for anything but its own interests, which I would argue is the exact opposite of what true masculine energy is. It's masculine energy when properly embodied, when properly manifested in the world, is completely selfless and only looking out for the protection and proliferation of the people that it's protecting, or the tribe, and whatnot.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. And I think that's something that more people, and in this case, we keep talking about men specifically, need to come back to. I mean, I've heard of so many grown-ass men who won't eat some vegetables. And they're just like, dude, like, Like, you can't just eat some broccoli for your own. I mean, even for your own health, you have to look out for your own health to look out for other people too, which I also think is something that's important to mention. If you have, if you have health issues for not eating, if your cholesterol is high as shit for not getting enough fiber and eating too much cholesterol, then maybe you're not going to be in the best shape to, I don't know, make other good decisions in your life, or even just like, I don't know, you get what I'm saying.
And even the way that you interact with other people, like you think about the butterfly effect. If you imagine all the interactions that you'll ever have in your entire life, and you think about the times that you maybe make a bad decision with food, and like, man, there's, I have beer every now and then. I'll drink, I'll get, shit faced every now and then, and I'll eat some pretty crappy food, but I always feel like shit the next day or even for a few days. But if you're consistent and you realize, man, how much of a difference good food makes and how much of a difference taking care of your body makes. But imagine someone who's doing that consistently, with that they're running at a suboptimal level, and they're consistently showing up to the world at 50% capacity. And because of that, they're more likely to have a negative interaction with other people. Like the butterfly effect of that, the negative interactions that you leave that echo throughout not only the person that you're interacting with, but all the other interactions that person might have. That can have a real compound effect over the course of a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not like you said, it's not like you can't enjoy some things that might not be, the best for your body. I mean, there's some things you have to kind of like measure the benefits and, detriments of, and, in this case, it's like, well, maybe it's great for your mental health. And if that helps with, just generally feeling better, maybe you want to eat some ice cream here and there. Like, obviously, I'm the same way. Like, I like to go out with my friends and like drink some beers here and there. And, socially, like for my social health, like that's great. I don't want to just be at home and always eating just whole foods every single day, all the time. Sometimes I want to go out and, once a week or something and kind of just
totally gotta live,
gotta
live.
Exactly, man. Okay. So I really loved that aspect we just touched on. That was just really great to hear about and very refreshing too. I feel like it's something that I don't think that I've ever talked about on this before, and if anything, I don't think I've ever talked about this with somebody else in real life but I could not agree more about like, your opinion on like men in general and, men's roles in societies and the work that you do in like kind of trying to help men find their place. I think that's amazing, man. So that's really cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And kind of just to wrap us up here, so where can people find you on social media and connect with you? And what about your coaching services?
Yeah, man. Well, again, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. As always, been a super, super awesome conversation. Love to have you on my podcast again.
I'm always down. You're one of the realest people who needs to like blow up on social media in general. Because, for vegan fitness.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, for vegan fitness, like you're somebody that needs to be heard more by people who are vegan and into fitness.
Nice, dude. Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Where they can find me is at TheVeganTrainer. That's my Instagram handle. That's probably the easiest place to find me, unless I shut it off again. But they can check out your podcast episode on there too, because I've got it. If you go to my Instagram, I've got all my podcast episodes listed there, and they'll see my interview that I did with you. So anybody who wants to learn more about Ryan, head over there and check it out.
Thank you very much.
Dude, it's great. And then as far as coaching services, the easiest way to is just to send me a DM. I can, and if I can't help you, if we're not a good fit, like I'm pretty upfront with people. I don't, if I feel like I can help, man, 100%. But if I feel like there's a better fit, like I've sent people your way. I've sent people to like Chris Moore's another guy I've sent people to, because there's a perfect coach out there for people. And then if I could mention one last thing, is for anybody who's interested, there's so many podcasts out there. For men's work is obviously a big thing that I love, right? That's something that I love to talk about. There's two great resources that I would point people in the direction of. So one is that book, which I think it's just a fantastic read. It's called From Boys to Men. And I can't remember the author's name, but there's 2 books called From Boys to Men.
Okay.
And this guy, there's one by a woman and it's a completely different topic. And then there's one by this guy, and he's a clinical counselor with at-risk youth. And so it chronicles his journey. That's the one I would recommend reading. The second thing is there's a fantastic podcast by a guy named Rainier Wild called Lost Man Standing, LOSTMAN Standing. And he's a Jungian psychiatrist turned to a men's coach, and he talks about all things men's work. So anybody who's kind of here, if any of the stuff that we talked about today, they're kind of have an inkling to, that's something I want in my life, man, those are 2 great places to start.
Awesome. Yeah, I really want to read those too, because as much as I loved Tribe, the book that I told you about, I think that I would really like those. So I'm excited to read those.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading. It's called Tribe, right?
Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging. That's the full title. But
Homecoming.
It's very popular. So I'll send it to you. And you also have a YouTube, right?
Oh, I do have a YouTube. Yeah. If you just look up Power Plant Body on YouTube, you'll find it. I don't, it's just, I would give you the URL, but it's just a long string of random numbers and letters. So yeah, if you look up Power Plant Body, so that's POWERPLANTBODY on YouTube, you should find it.
Awesome. All right, Taylor, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on today, man. Always a great chat.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Aethix Approach podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, it would mean a ton if you gave the podcast a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, Player FM, Pinecast, or any other service you're listening to, and subscribe to the Aethix Fitness YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page. Feel free to check out the articles, training and nutrition programs, and merch on aethixfitness.com. And if you like what I'm making, dropping a like, commenting, and sharing would really, really help me out. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.